Hello and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. My name's Harriet. Today I'm going to be talking through the books that I finished in the month of November. Now I read quite a lot this month. I'm actually shocked at how much I managed to read, but I think it's because I did do that weekly reading vlog where I read 100 pages a day. If you haven't watched that already, I'll leave it linked down below. It's quite a long one, so if you've got some time to kill and you want to watch one of my videos, then definitely check that one out. But I managed to read quite a few books in that week. It was really fun, and since then I've been reading a fair amount, but I've not been reading loads. But I'm still really happy with the amount of books that I got to this month, so I definitely want to show you what I read. Now the first book I read, I know it is a little bit early, but I did really want to try it because I've never read it before, and that is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement C. Moore. I have never actually read this book. I don't even remember it being read to me as a child, so I was very interested to try it. I know it's a very short children's book, but honestly I thought it was very cute, and now I do kind of understand why it is referenced everywhere. And I really wish that I had read it as a child as well. I feel like it would have been something I really enjoyed, but it definitely got me in the Christmas spirit, and I would recommend it to anyone that wants to give it a go. I don't know if I can rate it because it is a children's book, but it was really good. So if you're looking for a very short festive read that maybe you can read to your kids, or if you just want to read it yourself like I did, I would definitely check it out. And then the next book that I read, I do have a review up for, and that is No Place for Peace by Tom Dumbrell. This is the second book in the Pillars of Peace trilogy that he's currently writing the third one for. I do also have a review up for the first book in this trilogy, so I'll leave that link down below as well. Definitely check out both of those reviews because I really think this trilogy is going to finish on a fantastic note. I have really high hopes for it, and so far I've really enjoyed both books. So in this trilogy so far we are following our main character, whose name is Cyrus, and he didn't really know who he was at the start of the first book, but his character does develop throughout, and we find out things about his past and his family, and it's just very interesting. There's a lot of political intrigue. I feel like if you enjoy things like the A Song of Ice and Fire series, then you'd really enjoy this. It's just a lot of fun, and I feel like it's very easy to read and suitable for most ages as well. So I did end up giving this a 5-star rating. I thought it was amazing, but definitely check out my more in-depth review on it if you're interested. The next book I read, again, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to talk much about it because I will have a review going up soon on Rachel's channel, so I'll leave hers link down below. But basically we filmed it together because it was a buddy read, and I have no idea how it turned out because we did it on Rachel's camera, and it was probably just going to be absolutely ridiculous because we couldn't take it seriously. We just kept giggling, but it was really nice to talk about the book because we hadn't been able to talk in person about it. We were just doing it over Messenger. So yeah, check out Rachel's channel. It's Rachel's Reading Nook, but I'll have the link down below so you can click on it from there, and hopefully the video will be up soon. As soon as it is, I'll leave it linked down below. But yeah, Cersei by Madeline Miller. I thought it was pretty good. It's not the best book I've ever read, but you will have to wait until that video goes live to hear my rating. Also, if you've never done a buddy read before, I definitely recommend it. I feel like it really adds to the experience. And if there's any books you ever want to buddy read with me that you notice on my TBRs or anything like that, or in my anticipated reads, please let me know. I'll have my Instagram link down below so you can come and message me, and we can definitely sort something out. And then I suppose the next two books are kind of a cheat, but also not because they're relatively long. But I don't know if you've seen on Kindle Unlimited that there is this kind of series that's come out to do with Pottermore Presents. So they are Harry Potter themed stories. They're available for free through Kindle Unlimited, so I did it through that. And they're basically kind of the history of Hogwarts and the magic system, things like that. I've read 2 already, and then the third one that I read this month, and that's Hogwarts, An Incomplete and Unreliable Guide, obviously by J.K. Rowling. It was really good, really interesting. A lot of things about the history of Hogwarts and the founders and different things within Hogwarts, like Sorting Hat and things like that. I just find the history of Harry Potter very interesting, and I think that it is a really wonderful world that I am obviously so connected to because I read the books as a kid. I saw the films so many times, so I found it really entertaining. So it was a 5-star read for me. I feel like any Harry Potter fan will really enjoy this. And then the one that I read after that is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, not the screenplay, just the actual book itself. Obviously written by J.K. Rowling, but she's writing it as Newt Scamander. Again, it was something really interesting. The version that I read on the Kindle did actually have the little illustrations, which was really cute. It just wasn't as gripping because obviously it's just telling you about different beasts. I thought there would be more in there. There didn't seem to be a lot. So for me, it was a 4-star rating, but I did still really enjoy it. And again, for any Harry Potter fans out there, definitely check this out. I feel like you're gonna love it. And surprise, surprise, we have another book that I have already got a video up for with the review. review. I've actually got 2 reviews for this book because it was a reread, and that is one of my favourite books of all time, A Wiz Diversity by Ursula Le Guin. This is a fantasy book and it is the first in a series where there are 6 books and 4 short stories. We're basically following a young boy called Ged who finds out that he has the power of magic. And it follows him as he goes to school to try and harness this magic and what happens when he releases a very evil spirit. If you want to see my review, it is spoiler free and I'll leave a link down below. I'll leave my updated one and then I'll also leave a link to the first one that I did, which is probably very embarrassing. The editing is probably absolute dog shite, but I'll leave it down below anyway in case you're interested. That review, the older one, is actually for all of the books in the series, but I do cut it up in sections, whereas the one for my reread is just about the one book. So if you want to check that out, then again, I'll leave a link down below. But no surprise here that it was a 5-star read for me. It was fantastic. In fact, I think it made me fall in love with it even more if that's possible. I just love it so much. It's so whimsical and so pure and just fills me with absolute joy, so I was so happy to reread that. I did actually read it as a buddy read with Mishelle, whose channel I'll leave down below as well so you can go and check her out. But yeah, I just had the absolute best time and it was so lovely to read that book with someone who was experiencing it for the first time and me getting to listen to those reactions and to talk to Mishelle about it. It was just so lovely. And then the next book that I read is an absolute beast, and that is Magician by Raymond E. Feist. Look at the thickness of this book, just absolutely ridiculous. It did take me almost a whole month to read this. It took a really long time, but I had a really fantastic time with it. It's very heavy with the world building, not so much on the characters, but it was really fantastic. If you want a high fantasy series, or if you just want to read the first book in the series, that's fine, but I would definitely recommend this. I thought it was really good. It had some good characters in there and some good relationships. Unfortunately, they did kill off one of my favourite characters, which is really annoying. But I do talk about this in my Reading 100 Pages for a Week vlog as well, so again, check that out down below. But we are following an orphan boy called Pug and what happens when he is taken on as a magician's apprentice and how again he harnesses that power. If you can't tell, I love anything about wizards and magic, so I was really excited to start this and I had a wonderful time with it. It just seemed to be a little bit long and I wish that we got to spend more time with characters when they fell in love with other characters and building up on those relationships, because sometimes it did feel a little bit rushed. But yeah, it was a 4-star rating for me, so not the absolute best book that I've ever read, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. Another book that I read in that week of reading 100 pages a day is Autumn by Ali Smith. I got through this very quickly because obviously it is very short and I didn't know much about it going in, but I'm kind of glad that it was left that way. I will say with this book there isn't too much of a storyline. It's more to do with the way that it's written and how poetic and beautiful it is. It was a very lovely read and I had a really beautiful time with it. But if you need a strong storyline or strong characters in order to get into a book, do not read this because you will be disappointed. I absolutely understand why people wouldn't enjoy this book, but for me, not knowing anything going in, I really enjoyed it. One thing I will say is there are no speech marks in this, so similar to Normal People by Sally Rooney, which I have read recently as well. This also doesn't have speech marks, but because it is written kind of like a poem, it's not in verse or anything, but because it is so poetic, it makes more sense for there to not be speech marks. So that didn't annoy me. It didn't take me out the story or anything like that. Not that there's much of a story, but it was just a very beautiful and easy read. So for me, this ended up being a 4-star read and I'm really excited to read the other 3 books that are in the series. And speaking of poetic books, I actually read a little collection of poems by Ursula Le Guin called Late in the Day. I believe it's poems between 2010 and I want to say 2014. Very beautiful. They are all really lovely. Most of them towards the front of the collection. Ursula will talk about certain things and not say what they are, and you have to figure it out from what she's saying about them and how they're being used and where they are in certain places and settings. And then towards the end of the book, it's more to do with nature and balance, which is in a lot of her actual stories as well. So I had a lovely time with this. I don't really read a lot of poetry. This was kind of my first step into it. But I do think that it's going to push me to read more, and I will definitely be rereading this collection as much as I possibly can because it is just so beautiful. I feel like it's a nice thing to take out on a walk with you, to kind of find somewhere to sit under tree coverage or by a river and to just read through a couple of those poems and just let them sit with you. So obviously it was a 5-star rating for me because it's something that I really enjoyed and that is going to stick with me, and it's got me into another style of writing, which is really cool. And then I read Lord of the Flies by William Golding, something very different for me. I always wanted to read this book, but I never got taught it in school and eventually just didn't get around to it. But I have now. So we are following a group of young boys that get stranded on an island, and how they communicate with each other and kind of build up a hierarchy and clans, and there's a lot of tension and friction between this group of boys, especially because some of them are a little bit older, some of them are a little bit younger, some of them have better skills with certain things, some of them are a little bit too scared of everything. So it was very interesting to read. It touches a lot on themes that interest me, like human nature and how violent humans can be and how horrid we can be to each other, especially when we're young. So I did enjoy that side of things, but I do feel like it felt a little bit rushed. There wasn't really a lot of character development and everything kind of felt stereotypical, which is a shame, and the ending was a little bit lackluster as well. But I still enjoyed it. It's just, for me, it was kind of neither here nor there. I'm not going to forget it. It's not a forgettable book, but I don't know if I'll ever reread it. So for me, it was a 3-star rating, but I totally get why people would enjoy this, and it was very interesting. The next book is something that's been on my reading list for a really long time, and again, it's just something that I didn't get to, but I finally did get to it, and I absolutely loved it. And that is A Pinch of Magic by Mishelle. This is part of a trilogy, and I am going to be completing the trilogy. I don't think it'll be in December. Hopefully I'll be able to get to the second book in the new year, and then we'll kind of just go from there. But this series follows 3 sisters and a family curse that they are having to deal with, where basically they cannot leave the island that they live on, and they also get gifted 3 magical items, and they have to figure out when it is appropriate to use these items and the repercussions of them using it as well. It was just very interesting. I feel like if you enjoy the Harry Potter series, or if you're looking for something that's nice and whimsical, if you enjoyed things like Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, I think you'd really enjoy this. Kiki's Delivery Service as well, if you've ever read that, by Eiko Kodono, I think it is. If you enjoyed that, then definitely pick this up. But I just thought it was really, really lovely. It was a very beautiful read. It's got a lot of strong themes in there about family and honesty and trust. And if I had a kid, I'd absolutely want to read this to them. I think that would just be a really lovely thing to do. And I had a beautiful time with it. I cannot wait to read the other 2 books. So for me, this actually ended up being a 4.5-star rating. It's not my favourite book ever. And there were kind of a couple of things that happened that were kind of like a plot hole, because this does deal with time travel a little bit, and that's always a very tricky subject to write about. But remember, it is a children's book, so it's not going to be perfect. But I did think that it was really lovely, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this to absolutely anyone that is interested in it. We go from children's novels onto a pretty hard-hitting story, and that is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. I was so scared of this because I don't read a lot of science fiction, and I thought it was going to be very, very science heavy. There are some parts in here that were a little bit kind of difficult to get through because there were some science heavy paragraphs in here, but it's not throughout the whole story, and it does focus a lot more on our main character and how they are feeling during this story. So we are following a psychologist that arrives on a space station on the planet Solaris, and the people that are working there seem to have gone a little bit crazy, and he starts to see people aboard the space station that shouldn't be there, and one of those people ends up being his ex-wife. Now, this book does touch on some content warnings such as suicide, and it is also quite violent and quite graphic too, so just keep that in mind. It is a very short read, but it's super intense. It took me quite a while to get through this actually, but I did have a great time with it, and it was really haunting. It gave me chills. It's a very interesting premise, and I found the science behind it was actually quite interesting to me, even though for the most part I didn't really understand what it meant. But the bits that I did understand were super interesting, and I had a wonderful time with this. I thought it was really well written, and I would say I completely understand why it is a classic and why people really enjoy it. So yeah, this one got a 4.5-star rating out of me. I do think I will reread it in the future now that I kind of know the main story. I can pick up on little things throughout, but it was brilliant. I am super new to sci-fi. I've only really read Ursula Le Guin, and that's about it. So if you're nervous about this, just give it a go and see how you feel, because I feel like you'll probably get on with it okay. So those are all the books that I got through this month, and that is a total of 12 books, which is absolutely crazy. I cannot believe I read that much considering how much I've been working, But I had a wonderful time, and I'm actually currently reading a book which is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. You probably have all read it, or you've at least watched the film. I have seen the film, so I do know what's going to happen. But so far the book has been a lot more hard-hitting, and it's also a little bit more graphic. It does have a lot of content warnings, so it does deal with depression, it does deal with assisted suicide, attempted suicide, self-harm, and it does also deal with sexual assault. The sexual assault, at least from what I've seen so far in the book, is not graphically described, which is good, but the attempted suicide is. So if you aren't okay with that, please do not pick this up, because it is quite graphic and it did make me feel extremely sad and a lot of grief for the character that did it. So yeah, it was definitely really hard to read, and there have been times when I've had to put this book down because it's incredibly sad and incredibly heartbreaking. It is also very interesting because it is dealing with someone that wants to commit suicide in the assisted way, so have people help him to travel and go and do it. And the reasoning behind him doing that is very interesting to read about. If you didn't know, we are following our main character Lou Clark, and she is helping a disabled man who basically lost the use of essentially the mid-top to toe part of his body, the use of that, and he's in a wheelchair, so he needs a lot of care. And he is the character that wants to end his life, so we are following him, and Lou Clark is fighting to change his mind, and the kind of friendship and relationship that they build up through that. I don't want to say anything else, but yeah, it's a very interesting read, and I think that it's something that's very eye-opening. Thankfully, I've never had to deal with this in my life, so I'm quite lucky in that aspect that I can read this. But if you aren't comfortable with reading that, or you don't think that you're ready, please don't pick it up, because it is extremely, extremely sad. Saying that, it sounds weird to say this, but I am enjoying reading it. I feel like it's very interesting and it's quite educational as well. So for me so far, if it continues on the way that it is going and the writing stays the same, I think it is going to be either a 4, 4.5 or 5-star read. So we'll just see how it goes, but I am having a really good time with it, and I do understand why people want to read it. It just is extremely sad. But yeah, on that note, those are all the books that I read in the month of November. Let me know if you've read any of these, and also let me know what your favourite book from this month was. Let me know why you loved it as well. But yeah, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!